So I got to get your takeaways from last night's game. First, just tell me your overall reaction as a TCU alma mater, how you felt about how the Horned Frogs and Sonny Dykes teams played.
Well, I'm happy they bounced back. Obviously they played in the national championship a few years ago, didn't fare too well, came back, had a very disappointing season behind it. So now they're kind of getting back and trying to show that, the Frogs can play good football.
Yeah, well, they played really good football last night, and I was talking about it a little bit before we brought you in here. Bill Belichick is a Hall of Fame coach, one of the greatest coaches to ever, right, oversee defenses and teams in the NFL. Do you feel like last night, though, the one thing I noticed, and you'll know way more about this than me, that like some of those guys could be maybe overwhelmed by an NFL scheme or a coach of that magnitude, like and the schemes he puts in there? Is that possible?
Absolutely. I thought Belichick had a number of obstacles, meaning this. When you're a pro coach, often when you get guys from college, they've had at least a few years of development. So when you get them in the pros, you can kind of take them from what they've had. Now you're taking a kid out of high school who doesn't have that development yet, and you have to start from the beginning. So I think that was the first thing. The other thing is he's had great players in New England. When you're picking in the draft, you're picking the best of the best. It's not always like that in college. So I think people expected more than I thought was really realistic for a pro coach to come down to college. I remember when Pete Carroll came down, went to USC. He had to go get talent. He had to go get Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. You need players. And I think what gets lost is Bill is arguably one of the best coaches ever. But he had players in New England. It wasn't just Brady. It's Ty Law. It's Willie McGinnis. It's Mike Vrabel. It's Teddy Bruschi. They got players, So it's going to take him some time to get some guys. But I think give him a couple years, he'll be fine.
Yeah, we get so immersed, right? I'm big-time prisoner of the moment. Last night they looked terrible, but it's a long season, right? They got Charlotte, Richmond, UCF, and then Clemson. So they can get things back on track. But for Bill Belichick, this is the last question on this. How likely is it, you think, that they can get things together this season? Or is it really just a wait and see, like you said, Larry?
I think it's going to be a wait and see. And if you're Bill, you just want to try to improve each week. And, again, they're learning. People take this for granted. This is Bill Belichick's first time coaching, being a head coach in college in today's portal era, NIL era. So it's going to be a learning experience for him, but he's a smart guy. And again, I wouldn't put everything into this year, but I think they'll figure it out at some point.
Well, I lied. One more on this. You've been around amazing coaches, played for amazing coaches. He has a whole different approach than, knuckleheads like I do. So take us inside his mind right now. Like, what is Bill Belichick, the coach, the football savant, thinking, right? Is he just thinking X's and O's and let's do one right thing at a time and build on it?
Well, I can tell you one thing he's doing. He's evaluating. What do I have? What are their capabilities? Like most great coaches. In the pros, you can go draft a guy or trade for a guy. You can't do that in college, at least during the season. So I think he's evaluating what guys can do and what they can't do. And I think you'll start seeing some of those adjustments. If he overwhelmed them defensively, he'll make those adjustments. But you're trying to figure that all out. It's great in practice, but when you get in front of live bullets, it's a big difference. So I think you'll start to see him simplify some things and just try to focus more on execution.
All right, three-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, Larry Brown, taking the time, joining us this morning, talking about evaluating the Dallas Cowboys, right? We lose Micah Parsons last week. Obviously, the trade is what it is. You get a couple first-round draft picks. You get an all-pro defensive tackle, probably past his prime a little bit. But the Cowboys did make improvements in the offseason, Larry. I mean, you added George Pickens. The offense has to have gotten better. Are we kind of overreacting to the Micah Parsons thing and putting too much on that and losing the big picture focus? Or are the Cowboys in trouble this year, as you would see it?
Well, I'd say a couple things. I think we got better allegedly on paper. You still got to go out and play the game. Pickens a player, but you got to come here and make it work within the offense. I think the Mike is a big thing. He was their best defensive player, without question. So whenever you lose your best defensive player in the fashion that it went down, if you're going to trade him, most people thought maybe you do it pre-draft, around the draft time. But for it to go a week before the season and to play out like a soap opera with the owner on first take and the contract dispute, and the agent said this, and the agent told me to shove it, and Micah said no. So I think the way that it played out, it wasn't good for the organization, and it wasn't good for the team because it's a distraction. And I think everybody knows when you're getting ready for a season, and obviously Cowboys are coming off a disappointing season from a year ago. It wasn't what they wanted. You don't need distractions. And this has arguably been the biggest distraction in football a week before the season. So I'm not necessarily happy the way that it happened. And I would have thought if you wanted to trade him, if you couldn't get a deal done, maybe you move him pre-draft or around draft time. But it didn't go out that way.
But it does sound like, with all your experience, you do like the fresh start maybe in the locker room. Like, okay, let's get to football. There's no more of the outside stuff. Do you think that's a benefit now, just having the situation removed?
Well, someone made a point to me to remind me, the Cowboys got a couple of first-round picks, and it's going to be great. Well, if it's Tristan Hill, who you missed on out of UCF, if it's Taco Charlton, who you missed on, if it's Mozzie Smith, who you missed on, maybe you're not so excited about those picks. If you can turn those picks into something, maybe you have something. But I think the jury's out on whether or not they can turn those first-round picks into players who can come in and change the organization.
What are your thoughts on, Micah on the way out the door? We hear the stuff now, like, there was the lying down on the training table and, maybe he was a loner in the locker room, the podcast, this and that. Larry, I look at some of your teams, man, the most amazing teams in football history. It wasn't exactly, a real low-key operation. There was some stuff going on there. I think if you have wildly talented players, you kind of deal with that stuff, right? Or is there more to it? Was there more to that Micah situation?
Well, we had a coach named Jimmy Johnson who you dealt with. We didn't deal with the owner, and so directly. And I think that caused a lot of friction of having the owner and the player go back and forth. But that's how Mr. Jones runs the program there now. And I said, again, it's unfortunate. And if you're Micah, it's easy for him to feel undervalued. He played edge, he played inside, he played outside. He did everything they asked. There's no other defensive player to play the number of spots and to do what they've asked him to do. So I'm pretty sure he felt a little bit unappreciated, undervalued. Everybody else's deal got done, but the guy you're asking to do the most, he can't get his deal done. And he's only 25. So maybe he was immature in some areas, but Jerry's a skilled negotiator. Micah's 4 or 5 years removed from college. So I thought it was really unfair the way they interacted. That's why you have agents involved and let them be that buffer between those heartfelt feelings there. But it didn't happen. So I think it became very personal for Micah. And I think it became very personal for Mr. Jones.
So you talk about Jerry, and I love your history on this. It makes me think about your teams in the 90s. Just to kind of give people an idea, when you and Kevin Smith were playing cornerback, right? You guys were two of the youngest corners, I think, in the league, both starting. You were very effective on the outside, and that takes away parts of what the offense can do and kind of opens up the defensive playbook. With Micah, when you have him and he's healthy and he's playing well, can you explain to people what that does for a defense and how it really can open things up? Because I think that will amplify the absence. Like, how great is it to have him on a defense?
It's a necessity. And for me, if you talk to any cornerback, you can take the greatest of all time. They'll tell you, we need pass rushers. We need guys to get after that quarterback. We can't have a quarterback holding the ball 10 seconds. So they go hand in hand. There's very few great corners who didn't play with great defensive linemen who were able to get after that passer and make that quarterback get rid of that ball. So they're going to miss those 12 sacks, 13 sacks a season. Somebody else is going to have to step up. And the other thing that Micah played for them, he didn't just play edge. Remember, Micah came in as a linebacker. He's played in the middle. He's played outside. He's played on the line. So that versatility, you're losing a guy now, you no longer have that versatility. So he really played three positions and did every last one of them very well. And you don't see that very often in a player that can play three defensive positions at a high level that he played at. So other guys are going to have to step up. We'll see who steps up and who can fill those roles.
So the Cowboys take on the Eagles on Thursday night. Obviously, and it was illustrated in that documentary, America's Team, the Gambler and his Cowboys. Jimmy talked about it. Getting over the hump against the Eagles was a big deal. What was your most unique experience playing at the Vet in your time as a Cowboy?
Well, they hated the Cowboys. Oh my God! So it wasn't a place. Even the NFC, the whole East, the Giants, the Commanders. Now we call them the Redskins. It was a beast in the East, and so most people don't realize during my tenure with the Cowboys, when I first came in, 7 of the 10 Super Bowl championships came from the East. Washington won 2, Giants won 2, we won 3. So you're walking to the Lions' den there. You had to play. And they had great teams, and they had great coaches. Joe Gibbs in Washington, Parcells down in New York, and Buddy Ryan down with the Eagles. So not only as a player, but from a coaching standpoint of personalities, it was very interesting.
Well, when you talk about your experience, like with the fans, like I gotta get some of that from you. Like Veteran Stadium,
you're gonna get snowballs thrown at you. They're gonna be talking about your mom, all kind of stuff. They're trying to get under your skin. That's typical Philly. But yeah.
What do you remember the moment you guys turned the corner against them? Because that had to be a part of your building blocks, right? That esteem building moment that can help you get to the championship team you guys were in Pasadena against the Bills, in 1992. Was there a moment when you guys turned the corner against the Eagles?
One game they had 11 sacks on Troy, and they had some great football teams. Jerome Brown, Reggie White, Eric Allen, Seth Joyner. They had some teams, and we just could not. Not only did they beat us, they were dominating us. So when we were able to beat those Philadelphia teams, it changed. It gave us the confidence that we could play with anybody. They were physical, they were fast, they were talented. So we were able. Randall Cunningham at quarterback, they had great players, great quarterback. So when we were able to beat the Philly team, I think that gave us enough confidence that we could play with anybody. And so when we beat them the next year after they sacked Troy 11 times, the next year we actually beat them. And that really turned the hump for us. Like, we can play with Philadelphia. We know we can play with anybody.
When you were playing, it was a lot of fun to see just how good the Cowboys were. And there was, like you mentioned it, everybody hated the Cowboys. Well, because they were so good. And people just like to hate the Cowboys. But that documentary, have you watched that documentary?
I did.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was interesting. It brings back a lot of moments. It's interesting to watch something when you're right in the middle of it. So I was right in the middle of everything there and didn't realize it at that time. But there were some good moments. There were some rough moments. We lost together. We won together. You saw players and coaches come and go. So that part was disappointing. And I think more importantly, we thought, had they kept everybody there together, we think we could have made a run like New England, won 5 or 6 Super Bowls. So to have to go back and talk about what if probably was disappointing for us.
What was it like for you as a player when you guys switched from Jimmy Johnson to Barry Switzer? Now, you could say that was your finest hour, right, in that Super Bowl under Switzer. But what was that change like?
For us, it was a changing in the organization. So when Jimmy got there, he was clear for one reason, to build it. By the time Barry got there, it was already built, and his job was to maintain it. So I think as players, we kind of understood where we were. We were not in that building phase anymore. We had the players, we had the staff. So I think they had 2 different duties. And I thought Barry did a good job of just transitioning and allowing what we already had to take place. Some people don't give him credit for it, but I thought he did a good job. It was also a changing of the guard about who's running everything in the organization. So we didn't just get a new head coach. At that stage, Mr. Jones decided that it is the Jones family show now. So it was 2 changes of the guard, from a coach and from a front office standpoint.
Did you feel that tension leading up to that Super Bowl between Troy and Barry? Was that something you felt and were aware of, or did they overdo it in the doc?
I'm not going to say you felt tension. I think there was some disappointment on how their approaches were. For example, Troy was there through all the bad years, the 1-15, and the lack of accountability. So when Jimmy came in and changed the structure and started making guys accountable and chewing guys out, Troy was so afraid to go back. He didn't want to go back to where they were, a really bad team. And I think there was some fear because of the looseness that Barry allowed with the team. He did an amazing job, but he did respect you as a man, expect you to be a professional, and gave you the freedom to do the right thing on your own, where Coach Johnson ruled with an iron fist. So I think there was some fear that maybe by giving these guys that much freedom, we could go backwards. And I think that was Troy's fear a little more. But I think Barry did a good job, and I didn't sense the tension. I just thought difference in our management approaches.
So, by the way, you were, you talked about evaluating talent. You were one of those guys who was evaluated correctly by the Cowboys. You were a steal, 12th round pick. You start a corner on one of the best teams ever. And in that Super Bowl, you just make two huge plays. And the one thing I'll say, Larry, although that may have been difficult, some of the stuff to relive there, it really was a reminder of how important your performance was in that Super Bowl that led to that victory, that third win. How do you remember that? Like being in the right place at the right time, having the know-how to be there and step in front of those passes. What do you recall from that amazing night? I guess it was 1996 at the time.
Well, I think the biggest thing that Jimmy Johnson put in all of us is that he's not going to put a guy on the field who can't make plays at any position. So we understand that we have our star, we have our role players, but you guys got to make plays too. So, whether it's myself, James Washington, Alvin Harper, Kenny Norton, we had so many guys, that Darren Woodson, that can make plays. And so when it's your opportunity, you gotta carry your weight. So that was it. It wasn't just about Troy, Emmett, and Mike. We understand and Deion, we know what they're gonna do. But you have to carry your weight as well when you get your opportunity. So I think every player understood that, and that's what you did.
So last question on these teams. It seems like you guys really found a way, like as much as you could say there was a lot of egos on that team, when you welcomed Deion, it seemed like everything was like pretty smooth, which takes a bunch of guys who know that the greater than, right, the team is more important than the individual. Did you sense that or understand that at the time? Like what we're doing here is very mature as a team? Because today's team, sometimes you wouldn't see an acceptance of a guy making that much money and that was that flashy into a locker room, that was that prominent.
Well, the interesting thing about the culture of our team, you had what I would call your star guys, and then you had everybody else who also thought they were stars that wasn't the star guy. So it was a whole lot of egos. So managing egos was no big deal in that team. Jimmy was able to manage that. And so when Prime got there, it was easy to embrace him because the culture and the team was strong enough to handle that personality, who's a great player, great person, so it was very easy transition. Wasn't no jealousy. It was about winning. He made us better. And, I always say, if you got a chance to get a Michael Jordan or you got a chance to get a LeBron, you'd be crazy not to. So we were no different. We understood that. We're going to make it work. And we did. And Prime made it fun. People know him as a Prime. We know him as Deion. He made it fun. We loved every minute of it. And he helped us get better. We learned a lot from him. And it all worked together for us to make us a better team.
Larry, spinning it forward now to this current team, what are realistic expectations for this Cowboys team this season?
They have to go prove it. Everyone talks about what they are on paper and what they do every year. They just haven't gone and done it. And, I think Coach Johnson, I always like to go back to him. He reminded us constantly that we're not the Cowboys, America's team, based on anything we've done because we hadn't done anything. You got to create your own legacy. And so I think this group, if they want to be considered some of those great Cowboy teams and they're part of history, they have to go create their own history. And they just haven't been able to do that at the level that Cowboy fans expected. Going to the playoffs, getting eliminated first round, second round, that's not Cowboy football. If you're not contending for championships, then you're not doing it the Cowboy way. But I'm hopeful that this group can pull it together and go prove it on paper. They have talent. I don't think there's any other team that has more talent, but you still got to go play the game. You still got to go prove it.
Do you think as a former player that quite possibly having a chip on their shoulder this year? Because if I was a Cowboys player, I'd be a little pissed off. I mean, all they're talking about is Micah and blah, blah, blah. Do you think that can help them? Can that motivate them a little bit?
If you have a culture of those type of players, see, we had that culture. Hey, as a matter of fact, our culture was so different that a starter did not want to get hurt because the guy behind you could probably legitimately take your spot. So, I'm not sure these guys in today's era are really worried about the guy that's backing them up. But, if you're in San Francisco and you had, Steve Young sitting behind Joe Montana and Terrell Owens sitting behind Jerry Rice, you better come show up. Or if you're the Cowboys and with Jimmy Smith and Darren Woodson backing up and Larry Allen backing up Nate Newton, hey, you better get it in gear. So hopefully these guys can take pride and have that chip that you're talking about to say, hey, let's go prove that we can win and do it, because you have to do it when you have guys. We had a number of guys get injured that we had to win games with. Troy missed some time and Mike missed the game, but we had to step up. So hopefully these guys got enough pride and chip on their shoulder to say, hey, let's pull together and let's go play good football.
Larry Brown, NFL football analyst, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP. Thanks so much, man, for taking some time this morning.
I'm glad. Thank you, guys. Go
yeah,
Frogs, baby.
You got it.